It is a good day, dear viewers at home. Welcome to Home Learning. This is SGCSE English Language. I want us to look at discursive writing. So, with discursive writing, it is very much similar to an argumentative writing or persuasive writing. In fact, in discursive writing, you also argue. Just like in an argumentative, with discursive writing, you have to argue. All right? So, what then is the difference between a discursive and an argumentative? All right, so that will be the first part that we will look at, the difference or differences between an argumentative and a discursive writing. Okay, before we look at those differences, I think it will be proper to first identify, or rather first discuss how we can identify a discursive from argumentative when it comes to the question. How do you tell if I have to write a discursive or I need to write an argumentative? That is from the question in your examination. Okay, here, the one thing that we said from the question is going to tell you about whether you have to write an argumentative or we need to write a discursive. I'll use this table to discuss these two issues. So here, with an argumentative, we said that it requires your views. So you're going to identify a question that requires you to write an argumentative when it has got what? It has got the second person possessive pronoun. The second person possessive pronoun is this one, this word, your. So it is likely to ask that you express your views regarding a certain topic or a certain issue that has been presented. So this second person possessive pronoun is going to tell you that, okay, fine, I need to write an argumentative because I'm being asked to express my views regarding that particular issue that is at hand. So if you see this, a question that says there will be the statement and then it will say write your views. So after that, if it's got this write your views, then it means that that requires that you express your own views, or at times they use this one word, which is opinion. Write your opinions. So once it has this, then you would know that it's an argumentative, so you will need to persuade because it is your opinion. Then it means that you have to persuade the other party or the opposing side to see things the way that you see them. So you'll have to argue, and in a persuasive manner, which makes it a persuasive writing or an argumentative. But then when it comes to a discursive, how do you identify that this question, or yes, this question requires that I write a discursive essay? With this one, it's not about you, all right? It is about the issue at hand. So the question is likely to say, maybe it will come with a statement that is identifying the question that we're talking about. So there'll be the statement, and then after the statement, the commanding word there, or the command word will be discuss. So if you discuss, if it says discuss, then it means that you are to write what? A discursive essay, because it says discuss. And further than this, it can also come in the form of what? In a form of a question. So it would come in a form of a question. If it comes in a form of a question and that's it, there's no further command word or phrases after the question, then again, you can tell that that is a discursive essay that you have to write, not an argumentative. And of course, the statements that is going to be there, it will be a statement that is prone to differing views, all right? So if a question is asked again, there's an answer, the expected answers could be no or yes. For example, let's say if there's a question that says, so this is the question, it could say, should school uniform be worn at all times? So with this question here, you will have differing opinions or differing views from different people. That is differing responses from people. Should school uniform be worn at all times? So it definitely is going to have two sides. And the two sides there would be those that are for the idea and those that are against the idea of the wearing of school uniform. So you'll have both against and people, views that are for the idea, that is to say they support the idea. So as a question, if it leaves it here, then it means that again it is a discursive without this second person possessive pronoun, which is the one that mainly differentiates between a discursive and argumentative when it comes to our writing of argumentative essays or discursive essays. So we identify these from the questions. Okay, so now we have looked at how you can tell whether it's a discursive or an argumentative. We said that an argumentative can come in any form, but then at the end, the command phrase or command sentence is going to have what? The second person possessive pronoun that says express your views. And then we said that a discursive, you're going to identify it. Maybe we can say if it doesn't have express your views, then it means that it's a discursive. But at the same time, the one thing that you can always rely on is the fact that if there's a statement and then there's the command discuss. So if you just have to discuss, then that means it's a discursive. And at the same time, if it comes as in a form of a question, just like this example here, then again, it says it is a discursive essay that you have to write. So now I want us to continue looking at the content of both, the structure and the content of both, that is the discursive and the argumentative, now that we have looked at how you can identify whether it's a discursive or an argument. So we further talk about the difference between a discursive and an argumentative. Now we are looking at the structure of each and also the contents thereof. So between the two, an argumentative and a discursive. So now let's look at how we can identify whether we have to write what? An argumentative, or we have to write a discursive. And in terms of the contents this time around. All right. So here, with an argumentative, we've already stated, we've already discussed it in the previous lessons. Like I said, it says that you have to give your views with an argumentative. So here, you need to persuade. Okay, I'll say that is opposing. You'll have to persuade the opposing side to accept your view. You persuade the opposing side to accept your view, which means that the language that you're going to use will be persuasive language, language that persuades. But yet here in discursive writing, you discuss. I'd say you discuss the issue equally. All right? So you discuss the issue at hand without you having to persuade any opposing side, because you don't necessarily have to take a side when it comes to this one, which again brings me to the next point here. When it comes to the structure, remember we said that in an argumentative essay, you have to take a stand as early as the introduction. Before you get to write the body of the essay, you need to inform the reader that this is the stand that I'm taking right from the beginning. So here in an argumentative, remember we said that you take a stand and you do this in the introduction. And that is for argumentative. You need to take a stand as early as in the introduction so that the reader knows which side of the argument will you be on or will you be supporting. Yet in a discursive, here in a discursive, we'll just say you do not take a stand. So here you're just going to discuss the issue at hand and you support both sides of the argument equally. All right, so that is the one difference when it comes to the structure in terms of the introduction. So here, again, you are required to give a balanced. Here you give a balanced argument. And a balanced argument, okay, this will be arguments there. A balanced argument is to say that you both support and refute the same topic, the same issue, that is, which means that for the one side, which can be side A, you're going to support it and then give that supporting evidence on that one, and then also argue for the opposing side. So that is to say, you give what? A balanced argument for both. So both sides of the issue are equally explored. So you have to explore them equally. That is side A, which is for, and side B, which is against. And then here, further, you're going to allow the reader, if you explore both sides of the argument equally, then that means you allow the reader to make his own decision. You allow the reader to make own decision regarding that particular topic, which means that you do not in any way or form try to influence the reader's thinking. So that is for it, a discursive. You give a balanced argument for both sides, and also by doing that you are allowing the reader to make own decision. So yet here in an argumentative we said that the argument is not necessarily balanced. It leans more towards what you believe. The only thing that you can do is, okay, you need to argue, you argue your views. And the one thing that you can do is just, we'll say, and only acknowledge. So you only acknowledge the opposing side's views. But the main thing that you do, you argue your views. All right. So unlike here in a discursive where you have to balance the argument, here you argue your views more than the other. The other, you just mentioned that, okay, fine, there are some people who believe that this should be the case. However, I'm against that. This is what I believe. And then you continue supporting that one. And then here we said that you allow the reader to make own decision, yet in an argumentative, you want to do what? You persuade the reader to accept your decision, or rather to accept, or rather in this case, let me say, you influence instead of persuading. It's of course through persuasion, but you're going to influence the reader. So you want to influence reader to accept your views. So you want to influence the reader to accept your views, and then you can only do that through what? Through persuasion. So you do that through persuasion. That is, this is when we said that you need to use persuasive language, which then means that for a discursive essay, there you are not expected to use persuasive language because you are not influencing the reader in any way to accept your views. So you just allow, you want to allow the reader to make his or her own decision based on the balanced arguments that you presented. Okay, so the one other thing about your standpoint, in a discursive, we say that it is allowed in the conclusion. So for the conclusion, then you can take a stand, or you can express your standpoint. The conclusion allows you to express your standpoint. I'd say in this case, you pick a side instead of taking one, because you've already discussed the different, you've already argued the for and against. So it allows you that you pick a side. So these are the main differences between an argumentative and a discursive composition or essay. Okay, so our main focus for this lesson should be on discursive. I was just recapping on argumentative so that we are able to tell what we need to do. We are able to display the difference between an argumentative and a discursive in our writing. All right, and we are sensitive to all of this. Let's now closely look at a discursive as we did with an argumentative. How do we structure it? How do we present our ideas? How do we balance the argument and everything that has been said there? So for a discursive essay, you need to show that you understand and appreciate both sides of the argument. All right, you need to show that you understand and also appreciate both sides of the argument, which then means that whenever you have to organize, because that is the one important thing that we have to do for every writing, even if it's just a composition, be it a narrative, descriptive or what, we need to organize our work. We need to organize the points that we're going to present, all right? So in organization of the points, in a discursive, you say, make sure that you organize the points. We've got the points for and those that are against. So these two, they should be balanced. So make sure that if you've got point 1, then you'll have another one here. And then you've got point 2, you're going to have another point number 2 for that is against. And at the same time, for point number 3, you're going to have another point number 3 against. So it should be a balanced organization of the points. And then also even the points should be there. They should be equal, because once you've got 5 points for and 3 points against, basically you have tried to influence the reader, which you said that it is not to be done. That is influencing the reader on which standpoint to take when it comes to a discursive essay. So in your organization of the points, you make sure that you organize the points that support both sides. So it supports the different sides. So here you're going to support this side, and also even here you're going to support the side, because you are giving a balanced account or a balanced argument between the two. So you organize your points such that you are able to support both sides. All right. So that is for a discursive writing. So that is what is needed. And then in your organization, again, the one thing that I always encourage is that, in fact, it is important that you do this. You organize your points such that you begin with those that you believe are rather the strongest. So you're going to begin rather with your strongest point there. So when you organize your point, your points, you begin with the strongest point and then work towards what? Your weakest. Because surely we cannot avoid this. We're going to have those points that we feel I'm not so sure about this. So these, we categorize them under those points that are weak. Those that you are not so sure about, and even when it comes to supporting them, you don't feel you can support them convincingly. So then that will mean you have to include those points just before the conclusion, which means that towards the end of your body of the letter. So this is what you're going to do. Even this side, you're going to employ the same thing. You'll have the strongest point here, and then here you're going to have the weak ones. Okay, so that is the organization of your points. And further than that, if you've got point 1, like there is there, and then another point 1, it is advisable that your first point for the idea should, in a way, directly oppose that one that one against that idea. All right, so organize your points such that the first one that you're going to discuss is a direct opposition, or is a direct opposite, or directly contradicts the one that you've already mentioned for point 1, again on the opposing side. All right, so that is very, very important that you do this, because it makes your argument very, very effective if you do it like that. It makes your argument very effective if you're going to present one side and then directly oppose it immediately. All right, so it makes that you are arguing very effectively and convincingly. All right, and I'll just put an example there. If there are 2 people, they represent the different sides. So if you argue for Musa or for Muzi, so if you're looking at maybe the height, it is fair that when you look at the height and you say that Musa is tall, and then you go back to Muzi and also talk about the height too. Instead of saying, well, Musa is tall, yet Muzi is light in complexion, for example, then these are two contrasting phenomena that you are using to describe. So it is the same thing with the points that you make in an argumentative or in your discursive, that you have to argue a point and then argue another one that directly contradicts or oppose the point that you've just argued. All right, because there it's a form of comparison. You'll be comparing two similar things instead of comparing a bird to a chicken, or maybe a bird to a cow. And then now let's continue looking at the writing now of the argumentative, or rather of the discursive essay. So now let's look at writing a discursive essay. We come to the actual writing now. Well, just like in the argumentative, I think you've been exposed to different methods or structures that you can use as far as writing is concerned. All right. So the difference between the structures is that there are structures that are effective and there are those that are more effective. All structures are effective, but some are more equal than others, if I can put it that way. So the one that is more effective is the one that I believe, or the one that I believe that is more effective is the one that we're going to discuss or going to use here. So, but then you can use different structures as having been taught maybe at school. Then the one thing here that we have to mind about the structures is that the structure of any writing is going to have, and we know that after the introduction, we're going to have the body. It should be clear that this is the introduction, this is the body, and this is the conclusion. When I say that it should be clear, we always know that, or rather we all know that an introduction will always come at the beginning of the essay. But let it not just be that tells us that this is the introduction, because at times we do come across essays that we feel as markers that no, there's no introduction here. You're just getting straight to the point. So there needs to be an introduction. The introduction shouldn't just be there and be seen by the fact that it is in the beginning of the essay. But an introduction, I should just read it. And when I read it, and I should know that this is the introduction, I should tell that this is the introduction without maybe relying on the position in terms of that is in your writing or in the structure of your essay. So that introduction here in a discursive, we say that the introduction needs to, here you present the issues. It's in fact the issue. So you need to present the issue up for discussion. That is the issue that is going to be argued on, the subject of the argument. So this is the subject of argument. And then it is also referred to, or it can also be referred to as the motion. You need to show this in the introduction so that we know what is really this discussion about. What really the argument is about should be reflected in the introduction. And besides presenting or stating the argument, the subject of the argument, you have to state it clearly. So this is important. It has to be clearly stated. So you state it clearly so that it is easy to see that, okay, this is the point of argument there. And further than that, you have to express why, or state why it is a significant issue. Why it is significant. So what is the importance of this? We say that why it is significant. The importance of this, it gives you the chance to justify whether this is really worth arguing for or arguing on. Because at times you'll find that, okay, fine, there's no need to argue because maybe we are all on the same side when it comes to this. This is just obvious. All right. So you need to state it clearly and also why it is significant. All right. For now, we're going to go to the break, and then after that, we're going to come and look at the body and the conclusion, and then maybe also look at an example of a discursive essay.
I get sick. I get sick.
So welcome back as we continue discussing a discursive essay. Before the break, we're looking at the structure of the introduction, that what is it that needs to be presented or should be given in the introduction. We said that you need to state the issue or present the issue, which is the subject of argument, and then you have to present it clearly and also justify why it is worth arguing on, which is to say why it is significant. And then now we look at the body of our discursive essay. Here in the body, this is where you have to be very, very careful when writing it. Here in the introduction, we've just stated, and then the only difference there that there is from the introduction of an argumentative is that here in the introduction of a discursive, you don't have to take a stand, just like we have alluded to earlier. In the body, you need to be careful in your choice of the method or of the structure that you're going to employ. There are different structures, like we've said earlier, that you can employ, but in all the structures that you employ, the important thing is that each paragraph should begin with a topic sentence. So whatever structure that you are using, each paragraph should begin with a topic sentence. And what is a topic sentence? So basically, a topic sentence, it is normally the first sentence of the paragraph, which informs the reader on what you are going to discuss on that particular paragraph. So it informs the reader about that. What is it to expect? What he or she should expect in that particular paragraph. So it serves the same purpose as the title of a composition, that is the overall title or the topic. So this one is a topic sentence because it is a topic to, it's like a topic to the paragraph. That is, what is it that you're going to be discussing about? So it is important that for every paragraph that you write, you include that topic sentence, or you begin with the topic sentence. And then here in a discursive essay, the topic sentence is going to serve a very crucial, it's going to serve a very, very crucial need there for you to do, which is you need to tell, or you need to reveal. So it allows you to reveal the first side of argument. That is, which side are you going to begin with arguing? Because remember, you're going to argue both sides equally. All right? So it is going to reveal the first side of arguments that you're going to argue on. And one other thing that is important is that in your points, here in the body, every paragraph, or rather every point, should have its own paragraph. Whether it is for or it is a point against, it should have its own paragraph. And then the one structure that I like is the one that alternates between the two. That is the structure of the body there. It alternates between the two, which is to say you've got side A, and then you give a point for side A, you discuss it, you support it, and then immediately after that, you give a point for side B, which we said that preferably is the one that directly contradicts the one that you've just discussed for side A. So with this body, with the structure that we are going to discuss, maybe I can take you to a tennis match, because this structure that we're going to discuss is one that is also called a tennis match style of argument. So if it's a tennis match of style of argument, you'd know that in a tennis court, for example, you will have, let's say this is our tennis court, and then you've got that line there where there's the net and everything, and then you'll have one player this side, and then again you're going to have another player this side, which is a tennis racket. What do? You'll have a tennis ball. This one is going to hit the tennis ball and then it moves to whatever direction this is the tennis ball, and then the other one, that is the opponent, is going to hit it back again, trying to get it to this side. So that is how it is, and then him too is going to take it back to that side. All right, so that is how tennis is played. So you take it from one side. This is the dividing line, the net there. It is his area, it is his area. So let's take this example of a tennis match and say that this is an argument, I'd say for, and this is against. So in tennis, then, it is not allowed for one player to hit the ball twice before it crosses that net there at the center. All right? So even with you, as you write a discursive essay, the tennis match style of argument says that argue 1.4. So this is 1.4, and then immediately after that, go to 1 point against. This allows you to be more effective in your arguments, because here what you're going to present, you are then directly going to contradict it, or rather immediately going to contradict it, which again will present the reader with that opportunity to look at both sides of the argument because they are close to each other. Unlike when you're going to begin with maybe the points for the arguments for, and then maybe write 2 or 3 paragraphs on that, and then before coming to 3 other paragraphs against. It removes the argument from that one that is against. So it is not that much simple or easy to make a conclusion, because you might find yourself in agreement with the latter argument, which if it is for, then you'll find yourself maybe saying, okay, fine, I'm for the idea too, because that is still fresh in your memory. But then if you employ this structure, not to say that the other structure is not correct, but then this one is more effective than that one. It allows the reader to be able to make decisions based, which I can say, on your arguments, which means that it will be objective decisions. So while still on the structure, remember we're looking at the body. After giving a point, so we said that you begin with a topic sentence, and after the topic sentence, you're going to give. Here, you're going to make a point. And then after making a point, you need to give evidence, some sort of supporting evidence to your claim, because we say that this is a claim and it remains a claim until proven as a fact. All right? So for you to prove it as a fact, you then need to give some sort of evidence that is going to convince the reader that, okay, what the point that you're making is really worth it. All right? And then having given the evidence, you then need to explain. Because just giving the evidence alone is not enough. You then need to explain. So this gives us what it call, it is called the PEE structure. Here, where you have to make a point, and then here you give some sort of evidence, and evidence, it's the same as an example, and then also you then need to explain the evidence. So when you explain the evidence, in the explanation, here you are to link or show how the evidence that you have given supports the point that you have made. All right, so in that explanation, and then this is where you really need to convince in your writing. This is where you really have to show that you understand the point that you have just made and show how it is relevant to the topic that you are discussing, or to the argument or the point that you've just made and you are supporting in that one. So it is important that for every writing, you should support it. When you make a point, make sure that you support it with the evidence and explanation, because it's not enough just to make the point and say that I think so because I just feel so. You need to give evidence that supports the claim that you make so that we take you seriously. All right. So that is the one thing that we need to do when it comes to the body. And of course, we can always add as an option, of course, what we call a concluding sentence. That is at the end, where it's like you are putting a stamp on what you've just discussed there, on the points that you've made and given evidence and then explained it, and then you put a stamp by giving what we call a concluding sentence. All right. And then when it comes to this supporting, when you support using the explanation and the evidence, remember, when we discussed register, or maybe when we discussed argumentative essay, we talked of something called supporting phrases. Supporting phrases like this, when you use this word, okay, let me just go down there and say we are looking at supporting phrases that you can use to support your arguments for every paragraph that you write. So we are looking at supporting phrases now. And then for supporting phrases, we've got a lot that we can use. There's the famous because. You know, once you say because, it means that you're going to give a reason. And then it is important that after the claim, you have that because, or you can use as, and also you can use this. So these are just a few of the supporting words or phrases that you can use. This ensures that, so it's an example of a phrase that you can extend there, which means that once you have got this supporting phrase, you are going to support or give or explain rather what you have just discussed. That is the claim that you have made. And then by so doing, you are making sure that even the others who are in opposition of what you are saying sees the light. All right. So now we're going to the conclusion. We are looking at the conclusion of a discursive essay. Remember with this one, we said that in a discursive essay, in the introduction, you don't have to take a stand. But then the conclusion, it is the only one that allows you to present your own views. So it is in this conclusion that, so here you state, it is the only time where you are allowed to state what do you think, because you have discussed it both and then you've given a balanced argument for both sides, and then finally you state that, okay, fine, in all the arguments that I've just given, as much as it is balanced, I am more convinced by this side, so I'm made to believe this. And then having taken that, you make the stand, and then of course you need to give a reason. What makes you pick that stand that you took? So that is the structure of a discursive. We looked at the introduction, the body, and then the introduction we said that it should just state the subject of argument there without you taking a stand, and then we extended to the body, and then we said in the body you need to structure it in such a way that you begin your paragraph with a topic sentence that is going to introduce the side that you're going to begin arguing with. All right, and then we said that for every point, whether it is against or for, it should have its own paragraph. All right, and then after that, we looked at the introduction, at the conclusion rather, and then we said that the conclusion, it is where you can state your views and then also give a reason for that. So I now want us to look at a model discursive essay. I want us to look at a model discursive essay and see these things that we've just discussed there. So this is a structure, or this is an example of a discursive writing. So in this one, it is just made to give examples rather of what you are supposed to do. It's not necessarily a complete one. That is a complete discursive. So it is got in its body, it has got just one point. So we're going to first look at the introduction for a discursive and see what is it that is contained in it. All right. So here we've got the introduction as maybe the title of the writing. Let's say that it is on school, or on wearing school uniform, on the wearing of school uniform here in the country. And then we are supposed to give then a discursive argument for the wearing of school uniform. So we're going to begin with the introduction there, and the introduction is the government proposed to do away with the wearing of school uniform in all secondary schools in Swaziland. This proposal has sparked a debate among members of the public. So there we've got members of the public. We said that the introduction should state what the argument is on. So here, basically, the argument is on what? On the proposal by the government to do away with the wearing of school uniform. So the proposal is to do away with the wearing of school uniform in all secondary schools in Swaziland. So that is the main subject of argument. All right, so you've presented it, and then what then justifies it or makes it significant, it is that the public has received it differently. So this proposal has sparked a debate among members of the public. So if it has sparked a debate among members of the public, it means that the public are not on the same side or on the same page with this proposal. Then it makes it worth arguing or discussing, all right? Because there are different sides. But then if everyone was on the same page, then there wouldn't be any need for us to discuss it further. That is presenting, supporting it, and also refuting it. So there wouldn't be that. So what makes it significant is that members of the public received it differently, and then that makes it worth discussing. It is important that you include that in the introduction to make it significant, to make it worth discussing, and say that it is really something that is worth mentioning. And then you can also notice that there isn't any side that has been taken there. So the writer is not in any way trying to influence you as a reader when it comes to decision making. On which side of the argument are you on? So he or she tells us that I'm just going to present the facts as they are. So this is the nature of an introduction to a discursive essay. Now let's then look at the body of that essay. Remember, we said that we employ the tennis court, that is the tennis match style of argument, which means that we'll begin with one side of the argument, and then after that, immediately we go on the other side. And then we said that preferably it has to be one that directly opposes the points that you have made in the previous paragraph. So here we said that each paragraph should begin with a topic sentence that serves as a sentence or a phrase that informs the reader on which side of the argument you're going to begin with when you are arguing. So here it says, one of the arguments that support this proposal is that support there, it says, it is the topic sentence. It says that you are going to first begin with arguments that support this proposal. Supporting this proposal means that the proposal is what? The wearing of school uniform should be done away with, which means that the argument that supports that proposal is the one that I'm going to begin with, and then you state it, which forms part of the topic sentence, because that is where you make the point. Remember the PEE structure that we discussed. You need to make the point first, and then give an example, and then explain that one. So what is the point there? The point will be, one of the arguments that support this proposal is that school fees are already expensive. So it would be a great idea to do away with the unnecessary expense of buying school uniform. So that is the point that I'm making, that, okay, fine, already school fees are high. So on top of that, we still have to buy school uniform, which itself is also expensive. Then that is the point that I'm making. There is no necessity for a school uniform. That expense of buying a school uniform can be done away with. All right? So that is the point that I'm making. One of the arguments that support this proposal is that school fees are already expensive, so it would be a great idea to do away with the unnecessary expense of buying school uniform. All right. You've made the point. We said that after making the point, you need to give evidence and explain that one to show basically why what you've said is the case. So you need to support that one. So the further, there it says, what makes the situation even worse is the fact that school uniform itself is expensive. All right. So now you are showing really that this school uniform, it is expensive. So the claim that I've made is justified because the school uniform is expensive. This makes it unaffordable for most parents to support their children's fundamental right to a decent education. So the money used to buy school uniforms such as a tracksuit, a skirt, pair of trousers, a few shirts, and socks, and the expensive school shoes and sneakers could be invested in developing the child's school curriculum needs. This could be paying for extra lessons, textbooks, and stationery. So let's look at this one closely now. The support of the claim that has been made, that is, of the point that has been made. You have made that if school fees are if the school uniform is expensive, so what? Which means that in explaining what you've just justified, that is the evidence of your point or the evidence of your claim, these school fees, if we have to buy, or rather this uniform, if we have to buy school uniform that is expensive, then it says we have to share the little resources that are available. All right. And then if we have to use resources for school uniform, it means that we have to deprive other sectors or sections of this child's education. Okay. So what makes the situation even worse is the fact that school uniform itself is expensive. So this is the justification there, the evidence that you're giving. And then this makes it unaffordable for most parents to support their children's fundamental right to a decent education. So if it is expensive, then it becomes not affordable for most parents. And then if they cannot afford it, it presents a problem in itself. So the money, and then we said that so is a supporting phrase. You are supporting. So the money used to buy school uniform such as a tracksuit, and then I like this list there, because you are basically showing that the expense is there, because the school uniform is not just a tunic and a shirt. There's a school tracksuit, there's a skirt, there are pants, there's a shirt. You can only have just one shirt, but a few shirts, and also socks, and also the expensive school shoes and sneakers, because with the school tracksuit you'll be required to wear sneakers. So basically, by implication, it means that. So that one could be invested in developing the child's school curriculum needs, not these options, but the needs. This could be paying for extra lessons, textbooks, or also stationery. So these are the needs that are referred to by that one. So you have made your argument for, and then immediately after that, you want to quickly look at the opposing view. Instead of listing those that support, you want to look at those that are against. And then this is how you do that. You're going to introduce it with what we called a concession phrase. That shows that now you are arguing on the other side. So you can use here, nevertheless, or on the other hand, or on the contrary, or whatever, or even however can fit in there. So it says here, nevertheless, others still feel strongly in support of the wearing of school uniform. By using this concession phrase, you are saying to the reader, now I am moving on to another side. I am changing the direction of argument. All right. Otherwise, without this, it is easy for the reader to still think that, okay, you are still continuing with the support. But then having included this concession phrase, you are basically saying, now I'm moving on to the other side of the argument. So nevertheless, others still feel strongly in support of the wearing of school uniform. So it is in support of what? Of the wearing of school uniform, not in support of the proposal to do away with the school uniform. So they argue that it is a parent's choice to buy expensive school uniform. The main reason for a school uniform is to bridge the gap between the privileged and less privileged children. So here you are making the point there that school uniform is important. It should be there because it bridges the gap between the privileged and less privileged. And having made that point, you want to do what? You want to support it, all right? You want to support the points that has been made to show that it is a valid point. This is to say, if all children are in uniform, it becomes difficult to tell whether a child is from a poor family or not, because they all look similar in their school uniform. All right, you are giving evidence of the claim that you've made that the wearing of school uniform bridges the gap between the privileged and less privileged children. And then you give further evidence of that if they are in school uniform, it is not simple or it is not easy to tell whether this one is from a poor background or this one is from a rich background. So you cannot tell the economic status of the child or his family. This is, however, so still, again, you're using those support phrases there which are meant to give further support to what we've just given. This is, however, the opposite with casual clothes, which basically says that this directly refutes this point that has been made there, that school uniform is expensive, all right? So if you say school uniform is expensive, so it should be done away with, you are saying that the children should go to school wearing their casual clothes. All right. So this is, however, the opposite with casual clothes. So it directly refutes that one. They give full evidence of the children's economic background. They here, this pronoun here refers to what? It refers to the casual clothes. Casual clothes give full evidence of the child's economic background. Thus, it negatively affects the child's performance academically, as instead of concentrating on his or her education, he or she will instead focus on what? On what she has or what she hasn't. This is a phrase that can be used to conclude because it has been discussed. All right. So in all that has been said, I personally think that the wearing of school uniform should continue. So now you are taking a stand using the first person I. So now it is clear that the one that you're presenting or what you're just to present, it is your personal opinion. And then when you present it here at the end, it says that you are being objective. From all that has been said, that is the discussion, the argument that has been raised, both for and against. Personally, you feel that the wearing of school uniform should continue. And then, having given that, give a reason again. Support your stand. So you're going to use this, and this we said that it's a support phrase, by the way. So you're going to use that one to say, this is because on top of bridging the divide between the rich and the poor, which is a point that has already been made there earlier in the argument, or earlier in the essay, it brings a sense of belonging and unity among learners. So here you are introducing a new point, which is a justification, or rather, which is a support of why you take that particular stand. So this, therefore, brings us to the end of our discussion of a discursive essay. And I hope that after this lesson, you're going to write better discursive essays, and you'll be able to tell the difference between an argumentative and a discursive essay, because that is what we earlier looked at. And then we went on to look also at an example of a discursive essay on how we should structure it and what should be in there. All right. Until next time, have a lovely viewing.